Beyond the Pelvis is hosted by Dr. Keneal Siegel, a pelvic floor PT and intuitive healer, and Laura Haraka, a somatic practitioner and breathwork facilitator. Each week, we explore alternative and holistic approaches to healing chronic pelvic pain and other painful or chronic conditions. Join us and other experts in mind, body, and spiritual healing as we discuss a wealth of modalities ranging from ancient practices to modern therapies that challenge the conventional Western model of treatment. Let's get right to it.
So welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Pelvis. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome today Ashley to the podcast. Ashley is a former client of mine who has overcome a range of pelvic pain and symptoms. And we're so excited to have her here to share her healing journey with us. Her story is just truly inspiring. Not only is she a wonderful and resilient person, but she's also a devoted mother of two beautiful children. I am thrilled that she's joining us today to share her experience and offer insight into the steps she took to heal. Welcome, Ashley, to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
You worked with Laura, so I'm
Mhm.
curious to hear your story and excited that you had such a great outcome that you're here to share.
Yeah, Laura, now I think I worked with you for almost a year and a half. I was super thankful when I found you because I think I was about 5 weeks into this and probably doing what everybody else does. I know, especially what you did, Laura, is I was just getting on Google and Googling everything and finding anything that I can find on the internet, like recovery stories. And I was deep into it one day and I found your name because you were on, I don't know if you were on, were you part of Nicole Sachs at one point?
I was on her podcast as well.
Yes, that's where I found you from her podcast. I was on it so quickly, I didn't see that you had given your information, but I was just like, oh, she said her name in the beginning. Let me look her up. And then I immediately found you and your Instagram. And I remember I didn't have like an accurate Instagram at the time or now, but I just like made up an account and wrote you, and you wrote me back right away. And then we started working together. So I'm very thankful that I found you really early on because I know some people don't and go through this for years. So it was almost shy of a year and a half. And then I talked to you beforehand because I kept improving, and then I didn't need to see you weekly. And then I talked to you, I think I don't need sessions anymore, and wanted to get your input, and you let me know like I'm always here for you if you need me. And I did see you twice after that, just because, like, in the beginning, I was kind of spiraling on my own. And I remember one time I got sick and I was just like, oh my gosh, everything's just like, so it flared like a couple times. And then you walked me through it, and that was it.
So tell me what led up to you finding me. What was happening in your life at the time? Maybe talk a little bit about some of your symptoms.
Yeah. So I had what I would describe as debilitating pelvic pain. I was having right sided sensations pretty bad. I felt like at the time I couldn't sit down. I was only laying on my side because anytime I would sit, the pain would just magnify. It's something that you couldn't really put on a scale because I was going to the doctor so often, especially in the beginning. I was just running to the emergency room. I'm just like, there's something wrong with me, fix me. And they're like, well, what's your pain scale? Oh, you couldn't even describe it. It was beyond 10 if you had to give a number. So I was having a lot of sensations, a lot of what Laura has described in her past. Is it first started off as like what I think, which every woman, or if you haven't experienced this, then you're lucky. But I was having signs and symptoms of like a normal UTI, and I hadn't had one for so long since I was younger, and I misread the signals. And so when I was having these symptoms, I'm just like, I have a lot of like lower belly pain. What is going on? And I felt like an arousal, and I'm just like, what is going on? And it alarmed me. So I Googled. And when I Googled, like everything broke loose. I Googled that night. And so then everything online was just like, oh, you're going to be stuck in this position forever. And I just like spiraled. I remember calling my sister, like crying, like, what do I do? This isn't going away. And she was the first one to be like, this is your anxiety. Because I have a long history of anxiety. I got diagnosed with that when I was 15. And so I'm just like, no, no, it doesn't feel like anxiety. It feels like something else. And so she talked me off a ledge that night. And then the next morning, I woke up still feeling like that. And I ran immediately to the emergency room. I was just like, she was like, you might not want to mention that because doctors are just going to look at you crazy. So I was like, all right. So then I told him, I'm having symptoms of like a UTI, which it was at the time, but I didn't know it. And so then they came back and they're like, we don't see anything. I don't know what you're referring to. So I'm like, okay. So I went home and I just felt completely defeated at that time. I was kind of new into my position at work, but I called out sick. I'm like, there's no way I could go to work like this. There's no way. And so 3 days had passed, calling out sick. I kept looking up my symptoms. Doctors couldn't find anything. And so, which I want to add, when you have early stages of UTI, it's not going to pop up on a test. At least that's how it was for me. And then, it's kind of like a pregnancy test. The further you get along, then, that pregnancy test is going to pop positive. So that's what I was experiencing. So then I just was online and just Googling everything I could get my hands on. Well, I came across a form, unfortunately, and a form named a specific diagnosis. I was like, what is that? Oh my gosh, this has got to be, maybe this is linked, which at the time the form mentioned a name which is called pudendal neuralgia, which, as we know, it's TMS. But I didn't know that at the time. So then when I Googled it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have this nerve issue that will never go away. And within 2 days, I didn't have any pain, just the like PGAD symptoms at first. Then I had excruciating pain. And I could not figure out why I couldn't link it. I was just like, okay, I don't have that PGAD, but now I have what's called pudendal neuralgia. And so then I'm getting on Facebook forums, I'm getting on every single type of forum that I could find, researching this, and it just brought me to like doom and gloom, like I'm going to be like this forever. I went to the gynecologist, they wrote me out of work, and they're like, you're on disability. If you can't sit, if you can't do anything, you're going to be on disability. So that's the early stages right away because I'd already missed like a week of work at that time. I applied for disability and they approved it. So now I'm not working, which is like a huge thing for me. I've always worked since I was 15 and a half, and all of a sudden I can't work. I can't provide for my family. They're putting me on disability, which is only a certain percentage of your income. And so I spent my days like just sleeping, or any time that I was awake, I was crying. I lost a lot of weight during that time. So what led up to it though, the chaos in my life was that new job that started. I was very much not right away, but fairly quickly on my own, and I didn't understand the ins and outs of that job. And then my coworker that I was relying on said he's going to be out of town for like, I want to say like 2 or 3 weeks. He's leaving the country. So I had no way to get a hold of him, no backup. I was the only one in the office at the time because it was fairly new after COVID. So everyone was working from home besides me. Like, what do I do? There was a bunch of stress for that job and how I could pull that job off when I barely knew what I was doing. And it was really important for me to pass probation. And so I was stressed about that. There was somebody in our life that we welcomed back into our life at the time that we hadn't seen for like a year or two. He happened to be over during that weekend. So that happened. And then, all of a sudden I had symptoms the next day. And then like 6 months prior, my best friend, I've known her since I was 6, 7 years old. I grew up with her and her brother, and he suddenly and unexpectedly passed away in his 40s. So he was super young. So all of that combined chaos, I have a lot of different people that were in my life too that just were, for lack of a better word, like energy suckers. Like they expected a lot from me. I'm always available to anybody, anytime. I have a really strong family dynamic, but there's different ins and outs of a family and different things that they require, and some require more love and attention than others. So it was just kind of chaotic at the time. And during that time, I could not put the dots together, couldn't understand why all this was happening. I was very, very, very extremely stressed with all the circumstances in my life, friendships, even friendships that were, not good to me or toxic. I was dealing with that too. And so it's just all of it, and then past things as well, because looking back and working with Laura, I've had TMS majority of my life, but with different symptoms. And as quickly as one would disappear, after years, another one would pop up. And so this, I feel, was something else that popped up in another spot of the body. And so that's kind of what led me to Laura, or what did lead me to Laura, is because I was just Googling my symptoms and trying to find anybody, any recovery story. And then, yes, I did find you on Nicole Sachs' podcast. So,
It sounds like when your pain started, I mean, you mentioned it, like it started out as one thing. You had abdominal
mhm,
pain, you had the UTI, and then it
yes,
shifted to sensations of
yes.
arousal, and then it shifted to sensation of nerve pain. Like, and
Yes.
it sounded like that was just within a week.
Oh, yep. It was extremely fast. I
Right.
remember, you know, during the time I was making doctor's visits online, and I remember reaching out to doctors because at the time you could wait, I don't know, you could get in faster when you see a doctor online than you could going in. So it's just like, okay, I'm going to reach out to doctors. And they're just like, I have no clue. You need to see gynecology. And so I called one day, couldn't get into gynecology. And I was just like, I just need to see anybody. My doctor's not available. Just let me see anybody. And I remember scheduling that appointment, and then I was sitting in the parking lot and I was just like sobbing. And then I went to her, and like the same thing, like they probably have, I don't know, they were acting like they had never seen anything like this before, with a patient just completely, like, I was just out of my mind that day and every
Mm.
day after that. But this poor woman, I really do like respect what she was trying to do, because she's just like, this doesn't sound right. Like, I don't know. She's like trying to go over everything. She couldn't find anything. Okay, let's do, like, she even wanted to do like a bone scan on me. And she's like, I've never seen anything like this. We need to get you to gynecology. And it was because of the own research that I did on my own. I had like a list of like 10 different diagnoses. One of them was the pudendal neuralgia, and I didn't do myself any favors at the time because I fibbed a little, and it ended up being a big thing. But I was like, oh, yeah, my relative is a doctor and he thinks it's this. She's like, okay. And I didn't know that she had put it in my medical records as that. She was like, how do you spell that? So I was telling her how to spell it. Well, now she just put it in my medical records. So every single time I went to the doctor, because I was going to so many of them, they would see this in my medical record. And so it's just like, oh, that doctor already did the gas work for them. This is what you have. So I go to the emergency room and pop up. And then the doctor would be like, oh, yeah, I think it's this, based on what that doctor was saying. So I didn't do myself any any good by mentioning that. And of course, that like fib or lie magnified into this huge snowball thing. And I put with doctors trying to sit there and figure out a distraught patient, I can understand why she did that. She's just trying to figure out what the heck was wrong with me. And I know she sympathized with me because I was just on another planet then. So yes, it was fairly quick. That doctor's appointment was within a week. All the doctors that I was seeing online were within that week because I was thinking, okay, like I was going to work like that. And I was like, there's no way I could sit here and work like this. There's just I can't. And so yeah, it was all within that week. And then I think I saw gynecology like the next week, and I was so like my parents, my family, like everybody, I told everybody right away what was going on with me. Like I said, we're close knit. Some of it was harder than the others because like my poor father probably knows a lot more than about my pelvic than I would like, but the thing with my family is they can disassociate the person from the symptoms, which is really which is, what I needed and really good. So, I took him with me to the gynecologist. Like he sat by my head and we were describing to the doctor, and she had a chart up there with, female anatomy. She's like, okay, I can't find anything point to where it hurts.
Mm.
And then she was looking at the chart, she was looking at me, and then immediately she's like, yeah, this sounds like nerves. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is like my worst nightmare. This is everything that I've been researching. What do I do? I can't work. I can't sit. And she's just like, yeah, you're going on disability. I'll sign the papers right now.
And
And
this was the following week, right?
It was either the next week or the week after because I had missed a week of work. So I want to say it was the following week that I saw her. So it was at the very most, it was within a 3 week time span from the beginning to when I was being put on disability.
And then can you talk about what happened once you were on disability? Like what happened then?
So during that time, I found a local PT because, again, I was deep on Google. I was finding different forms. One of them, this PT saying she's got the answer, she could fix me. And she just happened to be in my backyard. And so it's like, okay, this is it. I'm gonna go to this PT and she's gonna fix me. She knows all about this condition. So around that time is when I can't remember if I went to the PT first or my doctor first. The appointments were like almost simultaneously, like within, a couple days of each other. And so my stepdad drove me about an hour away. And so he took me to that first appointment, and I just felt like a weight lifted off my shoulders because she just knew everything that I was talking about. She said she could fix me. And so I was going to PT. I wasn't feeling any better after I got out of PT. If anything, I was feeling worse because the area is so sensitive and they're trying to fix everything. But then she said, oh, I don't think it's pelvic related. I think it's all in your spine. So I'm like, what the heck? So then that led me down all sorts of other avenues. So with this first PT, I was feeling worse. She was saying it was spinal. I was paying out of pocket because nobody took insurance for this stuff, PT wise. And so it was over a $200 price tag every single time I went. And she's like, oh, you need to come in sometimes 2 times a week. I'm like, there's no way. I can't travel up to an hour where I'm like kind of laying on my side and have somebody else drive me to see her, 2 times a week. Sometimes I would go weekly. Then I remember getting my report from the emergency room and it said I had a bulging disc. I'm like, okay, based on what the emergency room is saying, based on what this PT is saying, where she's thinking all my pelvic pain is coming from my spine. That's what it is. I have a spinal issue that is causing all the pelvic pain. So then I saw Laura, and after that, like I was 5 weeks in, and she's like, that. I just remember that first phone call. Oh my gosh. And I'm just like, yeah, this is what they're saying. I have a bulging disc and a spine. And you're like, there's nothing wrong with your spine. It's not related to a bulging disc. You have TMS. And I know now you maybe not tell all of your clients that when you first meet, but however, since all my signs, symptoms, people that I was seeing, I was reaching out to different doctors that specialized in this. You knew everyone that I was seeing. You had all the same symptoms that I was experiencing. And so with without a doubt, you could easily say, okay, this you got TMS. And I just remember crying on the phone with you just because like that's all I did then is just cry. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like this, okay. this woman who overcame the same experiences, the same symptoms, everything that I had, except for you went through it longer. Oh my gosh. She's telling me that I have TMS. I'm going to sign up and I'm going to work with her. And so I saw Laura once a week. Sometimes emergency situations came up.
Sometimes twice a week.
Yes. Yes. And fairly early on too, just because I could not function. And Laura was somebody that I was grasping onto, where it's just like, okay, I got to get to the next week. And before I see her, like, I remember logging in like 10 minutes early for sessions. I'm like, okay, I'm here, I'm ready, I need to see her. So,
Well, you were the poster child for TMS when we met. You met
mhm,
all the criteria and you had all the tests
yes,
already. So we knew there wasn't anything seriously wrong with you where there was no tumor or infection.
right.
So just to, make sure that's really clear for our listeners.
Hmm.
And all the symptoms that you had, were a perfect fit for TMS. So I'm just curious, how long did it take you before you were convinced that it was TMS? And what was the turning point?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that real clear. So, for a long time, I was playing both sides. I was like, okay, I know it's TMS, but here's these medical professionals where for me, it was like, okay, doctors, PTs, they're the end all be all, right? Like what they say goes. And so I think that's just kind of like my upbringing. And so, but I didn't take into account, well, it's their opinion, right? I've watched many different TMS coaches where there's like, they're really good at finding issues. If you got an infection, tumor, that sort of thing, they'll find it right away or fairly quickly. So then I, since I was playing both sides of it, I was just like, no, these doctors are saying this is what I have. And anytime I went to a new doctor, and I know like Laura is just so calm with me because I know she was probably like, no, don't do that. But I'm just like, I need to go to this doctor. I need to see a different PT. I need to do this appointments. I told her, I found this new PT and I don't want you to be mad at me. She's like, I'll never be mad at you, but I don't think that's a good idea. So of course I went to the new PT and of course she gave me a diagnosis when she wasn't supposed to. And then it started the whole thing all over again. And anytime I would go to these medical professionals, it would just like, I'll be fine. I could go in there and I could just see what they say. And every single time I went, like you, Laura, I was just getting new diagnoses and new diagnoses. And I remember the last doctor that I saw. So this happened, it started at the beginning of April. So by December, I was seeing my last doctor. This was 2022. And she diagnosed me with 3 different diagnoses. And then she's like, you need surgery in that area. We'll fix you. This is what it is. You need surgery. And I remember going back to Laura and be like, this is what she's saying. Or you're like no, don't listen to that. Like everybody has that. And you've worked with different people and have, you know, talked to a lot of people and that's going through the same things. And so you've had patients that have had, that aren't your clients, but patients to doctors that have had surgeries and turned out worse. You yourself have had a surgery that did nothing for, like, that was pointless. And you kept telling me, like, I know this isn't it. This isn't going to work for you. But it's almost like I needed to hear it. Like, I don't know what I was searching for. I was just a mess. So then it was in March of 2023 and I remember you were going out of town, you were on a vacation and I don't know what had happened. All of a sudden, it just clicked with me. Like, so I actually went back to work. So I was on disability for, I believe, 4.5 months. And I went
Mm.
back to work and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to work. I don't know how I'm going to sit. I can't do anything. And Laura said, well, you can either sit on the couch on disability or you could sit at work and make money. And I'm like, okay, like I need to go back to work. I need to make money. Around the time I had obviously exhausted all of my leave. And so they were no longer paying for my benefits. So I'm like, I don't have medical insurance. I don't even know how I got through that time, to be honest, because financially, since they were, only giving me so much of my pay, and then they took my benefits. Like, I just somehow it just all worked out. I don't know how, don't ask me how, it just did.
You were paying out of pocket for all of these doctor visits.
For that, yes. So for the PT and yes, the specialized doctors, I was putting on like credit cards, which got me into debt, but nowhere near the amount of money that people have spent on this. It was a small fraction compared to Laura, compared to other patient stories that I've heard. I was paying out of pocket. I still am like paying on that debt because I wasn't getting money at the time. But as far as my everyday life outside of getting in credit card debt because of those, like, I was able to stay afloat somehow. But in March, I don't know what happened. All of a sudden, it just clicked with me. It was just like, so we're 11 months into it. And I'm like, I cannot do this. And I was spiraling so bad at work. Like, I would have to call like lifelines every single day. My dad was one of the lifelines. And I'm just like, should I go? Because there was an emergency room across from where I work. So it's like, do I need to go to the emergency room? And he would talk me through this. I'd go walking on my breaks. I would go to the gym on my lunch break. I'm just like, I'm trying to outrun these symptoms and they're not going away. At times they would feel worse. And so I'm just like, I don't know what to do. And I think I was looking up at a forum and then just all of a sudden, like it kind of clicked. Okay, these forums are triggering, even though everybody in my life had told me, Laura had been telling me for the past 11 months. And just right then and there, I put two and two together. And I think I remember texting you and I was like, no more websites. Because Laura had been telling me for a long time, even the TMS websites got me stuck as well. So it's just like, I'm done. And then I stopped using my phone to look that stuff up. And at first, it was just like, it was really foreign. I remember having anxiety over it because I had spent most of my life, like, when I was growing up, didn't have the internet, but we had, well, I mean, the internet was there, but it wasn't like how it is now. And so I remember looking stuff up in books and like then talking to other people. So I've always had this like anxiety about like health and just very much aware of like things that I'm scared of, and that comes from like a long line of anxiety. And so I did see a therapist, I saw a psychiatrist, I got all of that out of the way and figured out what it was that I was so scared of, which based on that and like past traumas and stuff, I was just a recipe for TMS. And this situation was the worst TMS situation that I had encountered, but it was almost like it needed to happen to stop the trajectory that I was going down because I needed a big wake up call. I had to go through this crisis, and I could say that it was a crisis because I actually was inpatient for 18 days at a crisis house because of this. Laura has done a lot of work on herself and through therapy, and she knew, I think you're depressed. I'm like, no, 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 there's no way I'm depressed. I was so depressed and I was in such a deep, dark time in my life. And so I left my family for 18 days and I got the help that I needed. And sorry, it was just like reminding me how dark it was. And I came out and it's like, all right, I did group therapy in there like every single day for, I want to say like 3 or 4 days a week or like a day. And then I had individual therapy, and my therapist in there, I loved him so much, but he just works at the crisis house. So then I had to find therapy on my own. And then, so when you leave something like that, they want to set you up with the tools so you don't have to like go back right away. So they were setting me up with, I believe it was called an IOP, where it's like outpatient. And so I requested to go part time at my job. So during this time when I was in the crisis house, I took another leave of absence, another disability leave. And so I went back, I think completely like after a month, my work was willing to work with me to go part time. And so I was doing this outpatient, and it was at an actual psychiatric hospital. So I was doing the outpatient IOP either 2 or 3 days a week, then going to work after that. And I was telling Laura, I got out of this deep, like, headspace that I was in, I feel like I'm getting better. However, when I'm going here, you're doing group therapy and you're hearing everybody else's struggles with different things, and I was ingesting it. And Laura's like, I don't think this is good for you. Like, in the crisis house, it was necessary because I was in the middle of a crisis. So, but now that I was coming out of it, I'm like, I would get out of there feeling worse. And so she's like, I think you need individual therapy. And that's actually what I ended up doing. Finally found one. He wasn't like all super cuddly or anything, but he got the job done. And I found a psychiatrist, an amazing psychiatrist that I still see. He was recommended by one of my friends. But I no longer need therapy. So 2024. So I did individual therapy for about a year and a half. And then I'm on a very small dose of antidepressants. And so, but I know that a lot of different, depending on who you talk to, different TMS coaches will say, absolutely not, don't do that, you don't need it. It was a necessity for me. And because I was so worked up about health and anxiety, and it falls under generalized anxiety disorder, but also known as health anxiety for me. I was just like anything that would pop up in my body, I would focus on, I would Google, and this was just the thing that broke it and was like, okay, no more Googling. I don't even remember the last time that I Googled a symptom. Sometimes if I feel something, like I'll talk to my husband and be like, hey, what do you think? Because I have spiraled a couple times.
Well,
Thought
I've
of
told Ashley that I would come to her home and take her phone if she was going to Google any uh any of her symptoms anymore, that I was going to come to her house because we
yeah,
needed to stop the Googling, which helped a lot once you did.
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
That was so that was the turning point for me. So I realized, that just something clicked in my head that day at work. And then as soon as I stopped, I started getting better. Symptoms were subsiding. I mean, I still had symptoms. I know we talked a lot about it where it's just like you have to remember you're putting like it's like putting rules with a child. It's going to be unruly. Sometimes like the symptoms would like scream at me where I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. But I was still living my everyday life because I was forced to go back to work. There was no way in heck that I was going to be on disability for the rest of my life for this. Okay, well, I'm going to go back to work in pain. And because I have two young kids at the time, they were 4 and 10. And I was like, I need to take care of them. They need their mother. They need me to be present. So I'm going to go to work in pain. And that's, sometimes when I hear different people say, "Oh, there's no way I could work or do anything because I have XYZ," and I'm not minimizing what they're going through by any means because I know I've been there. It's awful. But if I could go to work, like having a panic attack, driving to work crying every single day, reaching out to my lifelines, like trying to figure it out, being like the mom that my kids needed. I was present, but my mind was elsewhere, unfortunately. But being, present for my kids and doing this, like going through all that and then hearing some of the things that people say, well, I just don't feel like working or I don't want to work because of this. I'm just like, you have no clue. Like I was hurling myself to work every single day like that. So it's just like that was the first mindset. Like I told myself, I'm gonna go to work. And then fairly quickly, actually within that week of me going to work and forcing myself to drive and forcing myself to sit at work, I didn't really have sitting pain after that. It's because I was teaching myself it's okay. It's okay to sit. There's nothing wrong, you're not damaging anything in this. And for me to think something like that, like our bodies are not designed that way. Like you're like everything that I was reading was just like, oh, you're gonna get this nerve pain because you sat down your whole life. What? That doesn't even make sense. And that's what doctors are saying. That's what some of the PTs that I saw were saying. Like I even remember this second PT that I saw. She was like, "Oh, do you have pain on your side?" I'm like, "No, not at all." "Oh, because your nerves feel like they're shot right there. Do you lean up against the couch?" And I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "Oh, yeah, they're very tender." So I'm like, "Okay, I have nerve pain in my pelvic area now. And you're telling me I have nerve pain because I lean up against the couch?" Like, it just, none of it made sense.
So if you want to just tell everyone a little bit some of the things that we did together, the pain reprocessing, the
Yes.
somatics, the breath work. I'm wondering if you
Hmm.
could talk about some of those tools that you used to get better and which ones were really important for you in your healing.
I want to say the pain reprocessing was the most important because I did not realize all of the crap that I've been through in my life. It just seemed like, oh, I'm just living a normal everyday life. And you're just like, are you kidding me? Like, look at all the different scenarios you've gone through your life. Like, I didn't have like I know some people listening or some of your clients, like I know that they've had very traumatic experiences in their pelvic region. I did not have any of that. So, but the different traumas that I dealt with, especially as a young kid, was like parents divorce, like super ugly divorce that brought on, I couldn't even tell you how many years of like stomach pain. And, my stepdad at the time and my mom and my stepdad were just not a good fit, and then they were feeding off each other and both toxic for each other, and so like the fights that came with that, and then different ex-boyfriends that then just continued this toxicity and bad cycle. And the pain reprocessing was to go back to that time. And it was very, very, very triggering because anytime in our sessions, like Laura would ask me, okay, what are you feeling in your body? Okay, this is where I feel the pain. It's magnifying. Sometimes it would freak me out. In the beginning, too, before I met Laura, I found Dr. Howard Schubiner pretty early on. I read some of his book, and his was pain reprocessing too. So anytime I would like think about it or write about it or speak it out loud, my pain would shoot through the roof. And I could not understand why. It's because you're dealing with all these repressed emotions and it's painful, hence, the physical pain. There was Sarno. Like I would look up different quotes from him, and I think one of them was, "Oh, there's nothing like getting distracted by pain, like just to distract you from your underlying feelings." I'm paraphrasing that, but it just did not make sense to me because we are taught in our life physical or pain equals a physical problem. And this is like a new shift. Like now we're realizing, okay, pain doesn't need to equal a physical problem. Pain can equal not psychological, but emotional. It is very real, and it is worse, in my opinion, than any pain that I have experienced on a physical level. The emotional pain was so much worse. So you would bring me back to, because you knew a lot about my life and a lot of different things that I went through, and so you would tell me, okay, tell me about this time. And so then I would tell you about different times in my life. And then so one of the ways to work through the pain shooting up during this pain reprocessing is to did a lot where you're like, okay, find a spot in your body that feels neutral, find a spot in your body, like, and then it would bring my mind away from my pelvic area, and then I'd be focusing on like a lot of it, I think, was like my arms. My arms always felt neutral. And then you would say, like, oh, give it a shape or a color. Does it have a shape? Does it have color? Does it have a noise? And so by doing that, it shifted away from that pain. And then I was able to see, okay, like that a regular medical problem is not going to shift and respond by triggering like things that you're talking about. But it took me a long time to realize that. Just like I said, I was so focused on doctors being the end all be all, like, oh, they know everything. They can't be wrong. Heck no, they can't be wrong. And so that's what kept me in that cycle, the Googling the doctors. And then I'd go work with Laura, and then it's just like, okay, I felt better and we're doing pain reprocessing. I did join a couple of the breathwork sessions, especially in the beginning. Breath work is amazing, but for some reason with me particularly, it was triggering for whatever reason, not responding well to the breath work, but I was responding well to the pain reprocessing. I did try to journal, and I was I was way triggered by the journaling because then I was going back on my own trying to relive this stuff. And then it's just like, oh my gosh, my symptoms flared so bad. And Laura's like, okay, journaling is not for you. Breathwork's not for you. And so what was for me is having Laura go through what she went through and passing her knowledge on to me, seeing, okay, you can live your life, go live your life. I was like, oh, I want to go get my hair done, but I can't go outside. Why can't you go outside? Go get your hair done. And I'm just like, because I can't. I can't do that. Why can't you? Go do it. So she was all about me finding things that I wanted to do and then do them anyways, regardless of what kind of pain I was in.
So for you, it was a lot about the education. It was
Yes.
a lot about lowering your fear through somatics, some
Yes.
pain reprocessing, and we got you sitting again,
Yes.
which was great. And the type of breath work that we were doing together was conscious connected, and that wasn't for you, and that's okay. But
Yes.
it was about bringing joy back to your life
Yes.
and doing things again.
Yeah.
And it's about seeing what method worked for you. And
Yes.
those methods, the somatics, the pain reprocessing, and the education and mindset really were major. They had the most influence on your recovery, I think.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, that sounds like a really great, not experience, I don't want to say it in that way, but like you were able to figure out the tools that you needed for you. But most importantly, you had this experience, and I know you mentioned it or described it as a crisis, so that you could actually put a stop to all the symptoms that were going
Yes.
on previously. So, during the time, I wouldn't describe it as great, but now looking back, it's like, okay, that was an experience.
Mhm.
And now all of that was to heal all the anxieties, the
Absolutely.
health anxiety, which what you described was what would be considered a hypochondriac, which is
Yes.
anxious, like extreme anxiety about health and all the
Hmm.
grief and the trauma and the people pleasing, like all of that was to really bring it to the forefront to get you to realize this is how you've been living your life and let's put a stop to it now.
Yeah. And it needed to happen. And
Right.
looking back, I would do it again. I know that sounds crazy. I
Yeah,
know it
I
does,
understand that.
but I would do it again because if I didn't have a huge shakeup like this,
You'd still be where you are.
yep.
Right.
And I was like bedbound, couchbound, but I was still trying to get up and live my life. And so it needed to throw me off what I was used to. And I was used to having an anxiety driven life. And the first time I remember I was at work and I was sitting outside, I would send pictures to Laura all the time, like, this is my work, this is where I'm at, like this is what I'm doing with my kids. Like I was always giving her updates and different things that I was doing throughout my life because she was such a big support. And so I remember sitting on the bench outside and I'm like looking around, I'm like, where's my anxiety?
Hmm.
It's not there. It felt so foreign to me that I was just
Hmm.
like, okay, I need to get back. Like, because I'm not used to living my life being, and it's still there. It's still kind of in the background. I did a lot of emotional work on myself through Laura, through therapy, through psychiatry. And so it's just like I can easily get triggered. There's things that I put in my life that, like, different things that I do. So I don't watch anything like negative. Like I put that like thing in place. So because I get so triggered by like scary movies or like content that I'm watching. Like I grew up with like ID and 48 hours and all that stuff. Well, I was just feeding all of those anxieties and it leaked out, when I was older and even when I was younger. And so I don't do that. I don't listen to like commercials. I turn the radio down. At first, when I was putting all these processes in place, I'm just like, I can't do this. This is just so overwhelming. But now it's just like second nature. Okay, I mute the commercials because that stuff is triggering for me. And every commercial is talking about some
Medical condition.
met. Yes, it's
And drug that's out
terrible.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have all these things in place. Sometimes, I'm human. Sometimes like I watch some stupid crap the other day on Netflix. But before, like, I was like, ooh, this, I kind of feel icky afterwards. But before, it would totally send me into spiral. It would totally give me
Mm.
sensations, pelvic sensations, because that's like, the most recent TMS thing that I had. So now, instead of, because I did have migraines before, I had, chest pain before. And now, since this is so recent, like anytime I get triggered, like, and there has to be something major that's triggering. I rarely have symptoms now. But like before, when I would watch something, Laura's like, "Why are you watching that?" I was like, "It spiked my pain." It's just because we have to really pay attention to what we're watching and what we're listening to.
That's a great
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
And it's not that the triggers are in themselves bad. People think triggers like, oh, avoid them. They're bad. They are not bad. All it does is it sparks something in you so that you can recognize when you have allowed a boundary to be crossed. That's all that it is. So even sometimes when we are triggered, it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Like you mentioned, the breath work wasn't for you, but for
Hmm.
someone, even when they are triggered, sometimes they actually need to be in that space because that's the opportunity that allows them to then repattern their nervous system to experience the discomfort while at the same time recognizing that they are in a safe space. And what that does ultimately is desensitize. That might not be for everyone, especially the first time, but over time,
Hmm.
at some point, you got to address that.
Yep.
If you continue to be triggered, at some point, you do have to go back to like, okay, let's go back to that thing that I wasn't ready to face. And I can go back to it and be in this space of discomfort until you move through the space of discomfort. Because what I like to tell people is when things come up for you, that's the body speaking to you. And if it is a safe space, and you have the opportunity to feel and process those emotions, you can then let it go. The next time that comes up, that situation comes up, you're not going to be triggered in the same way because it's been desensitized. Now you can
Right.
experience it without the emotional response or the physical response behind it.
And that's probably what I was doing when I was going and living my life, because I was living it regardless of the sensations, which I was
Yes,
desensitizing. And
exactly.
over time, they got less and less and less until they just went away. Now that doesn't mean that I'm not like that doesn't mean that I never ever ever have pain. Sometimes I will. Sometimes it will be in that area and I'm just like, and then I just think, huh, like Laura, you taught me really well, like, huh, isn't that interesting? It goes away really quick. Nothing ever lingers for more than a day. Sometimes like, and that's how I know, like, man, I am really stressed. Like if I'm, my kids are super scheduled, and like between kids stuff and work and having a family and all that stuff. And then I'm just constantly on the go, on the go, on the go, on the go. And then I'm just like, oh my gosh, what is this telling me? Okay, this is telling me you need to take a breath. You need to do some self care. And I never really understood, Laura, what you were saying with self care. I'm like, what do you mean self care? Like, I don't know what you mean. Like, what do I need to do? And I remember one time I went and got a pedicure, and she was like, well, how were your symptoms when you got a pedicure? It's like they weren't there. And she's like, stop going to the doctors and go get more pedicures. I'm just like, I need, because I was just holding on to dear life to these diagnoses. Like it's all of a sudden they became me. And I'm just like, well, here's Laura, she's one person. And here's all these pain doctors that are telling me otherwise. So it's just like, it was like they were competing against each other, but not really, like, and so here's Laura on this side, and then here's all these doctors on the other side. And then actually, I forgot to mention this, but there was a doctor that I saw, Strax, out of Chicago.
Yes. Yes.
I did see him. I saw him virtually, and he is a regular MD. Plus, he is very familiar with mind body. So I believe I saw him in November or December and I met with him for an hour. I saw him and I filled out a ton of paperwork before I saw him and I submitted it. And so he knew everything about me before we met. And I spoke with him for the hour and he told me that I had TMS as well. So not only did Laura tell me, but I had this doctor telling me that was very well versed in mind body. And then also like I was so distraught at the time. I got a hold of Dr. Schubiner's email. He responded, "You have TMS. There is nothing physically wrong with you." And he told me in an email, "I can 100% guarantee this." Like no doctor is going to 100% guarantee anything, but he without like a doubt between these two doctors, there was nothing in their mind that convinced them otherwise that this was a physical problem. They told me it was TMS. Laura told me it was TMS. Everything that I was researching told me it was TMS, but I got myself stuck with the Googling and then the TMS forms because then you have TMS and you're like, okay, well, how do I fix it? Let's fix it. So then you're doing all these fixing activities all day long and you're like looking behind your shoulder, okay, is it gone yet? It's not how it works. It just,
No, it's not how it works.
no, over time it fades.
So I'm wondering, we talked for a while now, if there's someone out there listening that has pelvic symptoms or any other symptoms for that matter, if there's one bit of advice or one, you know, tip you would want to leave to them, what would it be?
100% get offline. 100% because it is stalling any type of progress that you're trying to make. You get offline and you do not see medical doctors. Period. If you're seeing PT that tells you have a physical problem, stop seeing that PT as well. I know. I know you are very well versed in TMS and I if you were where I'm at, I probably would have used you as a sense to feel better in my body because I'm sure that you work with patients that are very scared of their body, which I was. And I didn't have that where I'm at. So I'm sure you're a very huge help to clients that are going through TMS because you are versed on the medical aspect as well as the TMS aspect. So unless their PTs like you do not see PTs, do not see medical doctors, get offline. And that is my biggest piece of advice because this would have gone so much more quickly for me if I would have just done that. And I was holding on to all these medical diagnoses. And anytime I went, I was just getting more and more and more diagnoses. And oh, no, this is the problem. Oh, this is the problem. But no, this is the problem. I'm just like, what's the problem? And then you get confused, right? You're like, okay, so who's right, who's wrong? And so you have to put the phone down. You
Mhm.
have to because you're not going to get better without it. If you keep Googling and you keep having all these diagnoses and you keep looking up the diagnoses, you're going to stay stuck.
Ashley, you are so courageous for sharing your story, for coming on here, for being vulnerable. We really appreciate it. And it was through your constant courage and persistence that you got better.
Yes.
So,
Yes, I always told
congratulations.
thank you. I always told you, "Oh, you saved my life." And you're like, "No, you saved your own life." And
Yeah.
I did, but I had help, but the bottom line is it's up to us. No
Yeah.
one's You can give me all the tools you want, but I still wasn't listening. It's up to the each individual, but I had the drive. I had the drive. That's why I was still searching. I had the drive to get better. There's just no way I was going to allow myself to be like that for my kids. No way.
And thank God
So, yes.
you you
Yes.
did and you never gave up. So,
Yes.
We
And if
did
there's
that.
someone that is listening that says, "Well, I don't have the support system that you have," because sometimes people don't. I had a really strong support system, but find that one thing in your life that you are just so joyful about. If it's a dog, if it's a cat, if it's flowers, if it's something, find something and hold on to that because that's what's going to help bring you out of it.
Agreed. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I always love seeing you, Laura. You're like, uh, Yeah. Sometimes I'm just like, "Aw, I'm not your client anymore." And I mean, it's a good thing, but also it's just like, I don't get to see you.
But we can always stay in touch.
Yes, and we do. We do. I
We do.
send you pictures. You know what my kids are doing. You know what's going on in my life. Maybe not as much as it was back then, because I was any sort of win that I had, I was giving you updates on. And now it's just like the normal stuff. Here's some pictures of the kids, and this is what we're doing, and this is what vacation I've going on and planning. And so it's been amazing to keep in touch with you.
Thank you.
Yes.
If you'd like to leave us a message or ask a question, please check the show notes with the link so you can reach us directly, or email us at beyondthepelvis@gmail.com.